I'm going to talk to you today about Ansible, which is a simple IT automation tool that's open source in its most basic form. Ansible engine can be downloaded and run by you to manage hosts, applications, networks, cloud, instances, storage, all sorts of things. It's an open source. There's an open source engine for your command line tasks or for your basic tasks, and there's something called Tower, which gives you a GUI that gives you role-based access control. But in its most basic form, Ansible engine runs on a script host. So this would be the host, and it can run and do tasks on hosts out on the network, routers, switches, and all sorts of other things. And it uses things called modules that you download in order so that Ansible engine can talk to the specific kind of device it needs to speak to. The input into the top of Ansible is something called a Playbook. So that is a Playbook is a YAML file. It starts with 3 hyphens, and it's just a list of tasks in fairly plain English telling Ansible what to do. Also involved here is something called an inventory, and that is a list of hosts or a group of hosts. You could have all hosts in a data center, all routers, all Juniper devices, all Cisco devices, whatever arbitrary grouping you'd like to use. Then the inventory is also used by Ansible in order that we run these tasks against these hosts using this module and get the right kind of output. Today I'm going to, that's just a brief overview, I'm going to show you how to create, using a templating language, a large number of configuration files. So we're just going to concentrate on the script host itself with the Ansible engine inside it. No connections are going to be made to the remote hosts. All we're going to use is the local host, and we're going to use a template and a CSV file with the variables that need to be put into the configuration files. I'll show you how to do that now. It's nice and simple. The obvious next step after that is, once you've created lots of config files, will be to push them out automatically to the devices, but that'll be a subject for a later video. Here we are in the directory where my Ansible script called confgen2 is located. Here's the script itself. Ansible.cfg is just a system-wide it's an override file to prevent the system-wide parameters taking precedence. Confgen2.yaml is a YAML formatted file. As you can see, it starts with 3 hyphens. It's got a plain English name. At the top, it operates on the local host and makes a local connection to do so. It's not going to connect out to any routers or switches or anything, and it's just going to pull in this confgen2 role, which we'll have a look at in a second. There's a configs directory here, which, as you can see, is empty. If I change into roles, you can see there's a confgen2 directory in there. And in confgen2 there are 3 well-known file directory names: tasks, templates, and vars. So the tasks directory is going to have a file in there that tells me what to do. The template is going to have the Jinja2 formatted template for my routers with variable placeholders in there, and the vars directory is going to have the variables that I want to put in those placeholders every time I run through the script. So let's go into tasks, and there's only one file in here, main.yaml. Its name is to generate config files. It calls in the templating module of Ansible, and the parameters that takes in this case are the source, which is router template.j2, that's the Jinja2 formatted template. The destination is where we're going to store the config, so that's going to go into the configs directory, and we're going to use this variable item.hostname as the first part of the file name that we're going to create. All files will end in .cfg, but the first bit will be made unique, so it'll be R1, R2, R3 for router 1, router 2, router 3. And then we go into a loop, so with items causes Ansible to loop around this list of config parameters. And if we come out of this directory and go into vars and look in, vars only has a main.yaml file as well. There's a slight word wrap issue here, but here is the config parameters set of data, and each line here is a complete set of config parameters for a single router. So you can see that GE00 description, that's the name of the variable, colon, and then the value that the variable should be in this case. And then there's a comma separating it from the next variable, GE000 address, colon, and then the IP address. And then again a comma separating it from the next variable and value pair. So this whole line here is one iteration of that task to generate a config. Pull in the template, put these values into the template and save the file in the configs directory. It's going to go ahead and do the same thing again with this line and this line until it gets to the end of the loop. And then if we come out and go into templates and have a look at the template, if you know Junos, this will look quite familiar. The system hostname and item.hostname is the variable we're going to put in that case. These other things like root authentication and a lab user with the encrypted password and SSH, they're all going to be exactly the same for every router that I configure. Okay, so if I go down the screen a bit, we'll see a few more things. Interfaces, this is the GE00 interface. Description should be item.ge000_description, and the IP address is item.ge00 address, and then we have to put a slash in because Junos takes slash notations for the masks, and then we see item.ge00 mask. So that's how that works. If we go back up to our directory at the top, Ansible Playbook confgen2.yaml, and that's how we Ansible Playbook is how we initialize the script using that YAML file. And you'll see as this goes along, it's going to print out those plain English lines that we had: generate config from templates, gathering facts, generate config files. And here we can see an orange line for each change that it made. It's written these values. It doesn't mean an awful lot just to the naked eye, but there's one config file that's been created, there's another one. And if I do ls space configs, I can see now I've got 5 distinct config files. Have a look at this. Host name is R1. If I page down a couple of pages, here is my interface GE00 with a description of WAN and an IP address and a mask on it. Same again with GE001 and a loopback. All of these are unique. So if I look at r2.cfg, there's the host name there. There's a different address on the WAN interface, there's a different address on the LAN interface. So that's quite an easy way to generate a large number of configs. And if you had this as a kind of a base template, you could recreate, and you just needed, for example, you had 500 switches on your network and you needed to recreate, or you needed to enable SSH on all of those, you could just rerun this script with a slight modification to the template, and lo and behold, you've got 500 new config files you can push out. My next video will show how config changes can be made by Ansible on remote devices, and that's an obvious step on from this. Pushing things out manually is a bit of a legacy way of doing things, so we want to be able to do that as part of this playbook, perhaps as another task in the same playbook, but we'll cover that next time. Thanks for watching.